Merry Christmas Eve, folks. Today's message is coming to you as a repeat from Sunday. Somehow our Sunday morning live message got muted, so I had to delete the message. Hopefully, some of you are still able to catch up with our series, I'll Be Home for Christmas, through today's recording. As I sat down to write this week's message, the meaning behind it took on something completely different. My mother-in-law and my brother-in-law traveled in to see my husband and I, and it just added to the whole idea of coming home for Christmas. Over the last several weeks, we have been journeying to different relatives' homes in the Gospels to figure out where and when and what the good news of Christmas really is. When we think about Cousin Mark's little shack in the woods, it was a very simple home, 4 walls, a window, and a door, no real Christmas decorations. He had a really grungy kind of old tree. It worked, but it wasn't what we think of when we think of a big Christmas tree. The only other thing he really had was a little stone cross, and that for Mark was the real aspect of the good news of the Christmas story and of his entire gospel. The message of the good news began for Mark with the fulfillment of the prophecy spoken by Isaiah about John the Baptizer coming and paving a way for Christ to come into the world in fulfillment of other prophecies. We traveled over to Uncle Matthew's house, a beautiful Victorian home, and it was filled with people, filled with decorations. The one thing that really stuck out about Uncle Matthew's house was the fact that the walls and the mantels were lined with photographs of family members past and present. For Uncle Matthew, the good news of Christmas started back with the promise to Abraham and the complexity of the genealogy of Christ to come into the world. Last week, we went, as we were snowed and iced in at Grandpa Luke's house. Grandpa Luke has this cozy little cottage with a nativity scene out front, decorated to the nines. And he expressed the good news of Christmas when it came to the inspiration of the message of the angel Gabriel coming to Zechariah and to Mary, and the devotion that they both expressed through the understanding of what the message truly meant. This week, we are over at Brother John's house. Now, I want to apologize for some of you that are joining me at Brother John's house, because his house can be a struggle to find. John's house is off the main road quite a bit, and when you finally find the driveway, which is easily missed, you have a very windy road to travel in order to actually get to the house. It has some sketchy curves, some hills, some valleys. John's house is like no other. His home is nothing but light because it is made with so much glass and so many windows in it. In fact, John's house in so many ways reminds me of the House on the Rock, which is in just outside Spring Green, Wisconsin. It was built, it started to be built in 1945 by a man named Alex Jordan, and he had this goal to build a man-made retreat as awe-inspiring as the view from the rock which the house was built on. Brother John has some very unique but modern similarities to Alex Jordan's. John's house, as I said, is very modern, very geographical, very architectural. In fact, it might have been inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright in many ways. The amount of glass and windows allows you to take in the inspiring creation around you. And because of the amount of glass and windows, it is nothing more than a beacon of light. Architect Kevin Burns describes Brother John's house in its modern delight by saying around every corner are new vistas and geometric patterns that inspire one's mind to contemplate the potential meaning of the symbolic gestures, just as the Gospel of John invites the reader to ponder the double and triple meaning of its carefully chosen words. Now, when you grab your cup of coffee and you sit down with Brother John, and you ask Brother John where he thinks the good news of Christmas starts, Brother John says something very unique. He says, enarche. Enarche is Greek, and it means among or beginning or origin. Most folks who have read the Gospel according to John know that the very first 3 words are in the beginning. But today I want us to maybe keep a little more of the Greek translation when we think about among the origin. If we translate the Greek closer to among the origin, it's defined as from within the source or starting point of a group or a collection, essentially indicating that something is coming from the very beginning or core of a particular group or thing. It refers to the root or starting point of something within a wider context. John's message about the good news of Christmas and where it begins echoes the first words of Genesis. Now we have to understand that when we think of Genesis, we've now got to go from Greek to Hebrew. So the first thing we read in Genesis is Reshith, meaning beginning. Through the message of John, the importance of the message of Christmas, he carries us back to before space and time began, when there was only God. The moment God created the heavens and the earth, the light and the darkness, the day, the light, the skies, the water, land, sea, crops, animals, land of air and sea, and earth, and mankind, he started the very process leading us towards what we know as redemption and penance. In the beginning, or among the origin, was the Word. And the word is capitalized, which means now the Word is a proper noun. Knowing Brother John transports us back to Genesis and creation. Creation began when God spoke words, "Let there be light." God spoke, creation happened. Among the origin was the Word. There have been many debates about the theory of the Big Bang, and no, I'm not talking about the show, and the theory of creation when it comes to science and understanding of science, God. Can they coincide? Do they coincide? And I'm not going to sit here and break down both of those theories because I could, but that's an entirely different message for an entirely different day. But I want to point out something based on something we learned from Brother John. God spoke, creation happened. The Word, a proper noun, was with God when he spoke and created everything. So what if, and this was something that was brought to my attention by a different scholar that I happened to be listening to. It was a lecture that I heard, and this was brought to my attention. So this is not my original thought, but I'm going to add a little bit to it. What if the Big Bang was the sound of God speaking everything into existence? What if the Big Bang was the Word spoken into existence? Chemistry 101. I'm not a very good scientist. I understand science, but I'm not the best scientist. My dad is a chemical engineer, and he can vouch for that. He got me through all of my science classes when I was in high school and into my bachelor's degree. But the one thing that I remember, and I always will remember, especially from my dad, you cannot have a reaction if you don't have a catalyst, okay? So the only thing that stuck in my mind is you can't have a reaction without a catalyst. The Big Bang can't happen without a catalyst. So if that's the case, who or what caused the Big Bang that is among the controversy between scientists / some atheists and believers in Christ? Brother John writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." He was with God in the beginning, which means Before Jesus came into this world in the form of a tiny infant, he already was. Jesus was the Word, and God as God, and was with God, and God breathed into existence. In him was life. Brother John tells us, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. That light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Now, there's another individual who is very intelligent, and I've read her work, and her work is also one of the things that inspired our series, the I'll Be Home for Christmas series. Her name is Cynthia Campbell, and she wrote, according to John, what came into being through the word was the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness will never grasp that light. There is a double meaning here. Darkness will never apprehend the light, and it will never comprehend it either. Think about that. For darkness, the light is the enemy. Now, if any of you have anyone in your family that has military training, you know that in order to take out the enemy, you have to figure out how the enemy operates. You have to try to figure out how it thinks, how it's going to move, how it's going to work. For darkness, the light is its enemy. Darkness constantly tries to overtake light, yet because it cannot actually comprehend light, it cannot understand how light works, where it's going to come from, how it's going to maneuver, how it's going to light up everything, it cannot actually take it out because darkness cannot comprehend light. Irenaeus, who was a Greek bishop, once said, God became what we are in order to make us what God is. Now, I'm not saying that all of us will be fully divine. But the idea here is that God sent his son, a light, into the world so that we would be able to be the light of God and be a light for others. Brother John's Christmas message is really fairly simple, yet sounds very complex. Very interesting question. Because Christmas Eve, many churches use light. We use candles to remind us of the light of Christ into the world. Are you going to carry the light of Christ out of your homes, out of your church buildings, and into the lives of each person you come into contact with? That's the question you have to ask yourself today. For those of you where this might be your only chance to sit down and listen to a message, I hope all of you have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and have the best remainder of 2024 as we get ready to welcome in 2025. It's just around the corner. Blessings, peace, hope, joy, peace, and love to each and every one of you. God bless you. Have a great rest of your holiday season.